The way it's going to be changing, and if you look at this next slide, you'll see here, for example, that auditing is 4 hours, BEC becomes 3 hours. So you have auditing, which I'll talk about the content in just a moment. You have FAIR, REG, and BEC. But again, noticing here, it's still 14 hours in total, and you still have that 18-month window. As far as the breakdown of what is going to be included in each exam, you'll notice here that we've got on the left side of the slide, you'll have the current content, and on the other side, you'll have the new content. As far as the current content, planning the engagement, internal control, documentation, review, communications. On the other side, the new content deals with engagement and acceptance. It deals with understanding the entity, but it also includes here internal control. So what they're looking at is understanding the entity and the environment, about 16 to 20%. So that's going to increase. A little more detailed testing on internal control. They're also going to bring some of that into the BEC exam as well. You'll notice dropping down accounting and review services, SSARS, statements on standards for accounting and review services, reviews, compilations, things like that. That's going to be much more heavily tested. Also, professional responsibilities, ethics, independence. That's an area that, as it relates to audits, they're going to bring back from regulation back into audit. And the reason I say back into is back in the day when I was your age, I sound like your parents, when I took the exam, we had those topics covered in audit. Then they restructured the exam several times. 2004, they said, let's move those areas over to regulation. Now they realized, you know what, professional responsibilities, independence, ethics as it relates to an audit, let's pull that back into the audit section. So to kind of summarize some of these changes, you'll see internal control and SSARS are increasing as far as the percentage that they're going to make up the exam. Moving professional responsibilities, independence, and ethics from reg back into audit. Also, because the exam is hopefully going more global, and we'll talk about IFRS as well, what it talks about here is much more international accounting issues. For example, international ethics standards, international auditing and assurance standards, international federations of account, differences between ISA and U.S. auditing standards. So again, it's going much more global. That means I have to include all this new information in the audit section, as well as doing a little bit of reshuffling as well. As far as the FAIR exam. Now with FAIR, when you look down the current content versus the new content, there's not a lot of huge changes in percentages. However, they're going to be adding all this IFRS, which I'll talk about momentarily. As far as government, and at the meeting they said, they were thinking of reducing it. They said, we're going to keep it the same. So you'll notice here at the bottom, governmental accounting is still 8 to 12%. You'll also notice that nonprofit and nonprofit accounting is 8 to 12%. So these are two areas where they were considering, maybe we'll reduce them. You know what? Now they're going to show up. But the other thing, too, they're still going to show up. In the past, they've generally been multiple choice. In the future, everything is eligible for problems. Everything is eligible in BEC for written communication essays. So even areas that weren't consistently tested in the past as a problem, as a simulation, now chances are they will start showing up, which I'll expand on momentarily. So to summarize some of those points for FAIR, you'll notice here, identifying and understanding the differences between U.S. GAAP and IFRS, which is International Financial Reporting Standards. Also, being able to adopt it. So in other words, first year we're using IFRS. What did we do last year? Comparative statements. How do you make the adjustments and so on? The other thing, too, you need to be able to identify the differences in the definitions, the recognition and measurement, and the presentation and disclosure between U.S. GAAP and IFRS. For example, revenue recognition, right? We have long-term construction contracts. What is it? Percentage of completion, completed contract. That's what we use for GAAP. IFRS says, hey, you know what? We're only going to use percentage of completion, not completed contract. Inventories, for example. With inventories, we have FIFO, LIFO, weighted average, moving average, our favorite dollar value LIFO. IFRS says, FIFO, LIFO, we're not going to have LIFO. We're just going to use FIFO. It talks about valuation differences. What is it? Lower of cost or market. What's it going to be under IFRS? Lower of cost or NRV, net realizable value. So there's these changes. So what that means is I'm currently going through and making all of these adjustments because I need to teach you not only what is currently generally accepted accounting principles, then I need to take every area and say, how is this adjusted? How is it changed under IFRS? So that's where I need to walk you through to make sure you're understanding all the different rules based on the kinds of questions they're going to use. And they did say starting first window 2011, chances are they're going to start introducing some of the IFRS types of questions. As far as the regulation exam, regulation changes. Now, when you look through that, you'll notice at the top there, it mentions ethics and professional responsibilities. Then it says ethics, professional, legal responsibilities pertaining exclusively to tax. Why? Because the things that related to audit now got shifted back into the audit exam. You'll also notice business law. It says business law including new business structure. Now, the business structure, this is something that was in the BEC exam. So it was in the BEC exam. However, the taxation of business structures is in regulation. So back in my exam, we had those together. Then they broke them apart. Now they're going back to the old way and say, let's put them back together, which makes sense. Because in regulation, you get the taxation. Remember, regulation is tax and law. So in this exam, you're getting how do you form a corporation, an S Corp, a C Corp, a partnership, LLP, limited partnership, LLC. So it talks about the formation. We also talk about the taxation. Well, up in the past, we had how to form it in BEC. Now they're putting the formation and the taxation together, which makes sense. You'll notice property percentage is increasing slightly, individual tax is increasing as well. So to kind of summarize some of these changes, you'll see here regulation, and this is an important issue, is not really affected by IFRS at this time. And one of the things that came up at the meeting is they said, because of the U.S.'s hesitation to adopt IFRS, we don't want to readjust the tax code yet and so on. Let's kind of wait and see the fallout. So IFRS will probably be the one area it won't hit at this time is regulation, although they did say the content may be modified to reflect it in the future. So again, once they get all these changes in audit, fair, and BEC, then I could see them going back and adding some stuff into regulation. As far as property and individual tax, a little bit more heavily tested. Also, as I mentioned, it now includes business structures, which again, business structures is how do you form a partnership, corporation, S Corp, less than or equal to 100 shareholders, and so forth. As far as BEC, now, BEC, you'll notice here, the business structures, a lot of that is getting shifted over, as I just mentioned. You also have corporate governance. And they brought this up at the meeting saying, you know what, because of all the worldwide global issues, we want to cover more areas on governance and internal control, which talks about executive compensation, monitoring. So they're actually bringing a lot of internal control about the internal control components and so on. They're bringing control environment, risk assessment control, activities, information monitoring, all of that in, still leaving it in auditing, but also bringing it into the BEC area. You'll notice economics is becoming more heavily tested as well. We cover micro, macro, but we're also looking more into the globalization of economics. IT, information technology, is becoming less heavily tested. I'm sure most of us are like, whew, that's nice. So instead of 22 to 28, going to drop to 15 to 19%. They're also adding more information in the area of operations management, because there is some of that on the exam currently. They're adding, making it more robust. So to summarize, you'll see here added corporate governance and internal control, executive compensation, monitoring devices, internal control framework, added other areas as well. And this is just a sampling of what they're adding. For example, enterprise risk management called ERM, added more information on operations management, expanded economics, reduced IT, and moved business structures out from BEC over to regulation.